This is Eric L. Donovan, the Mindset Disruption Strategist. Let's talk about generational wealth. More specifically, let's talk about the 3 questions that will help you maximize generational wealth in 2022. But before I get into those 3 questions, make sure that if you're enjoying this content that you subscribe to this page, and then make sure that you also hit the notification bell so that as new content is coming out, you're constantly notified of the new content and the new information that's coming. Because as you think about your family, you think about generational prosperity, you think about kingdom impact, you're getting the insights and lessons that you need to think about this differently. So let's get into this. Let's talk about thinking generational wealth and these 3 questions, because at the end of the day, building generational wealth is about creating a blessing for our children, our grandchildren, and those that come after us that they can use, right? A generational blessing that can help them make decisions, help them, sometimes get ahead of maybe even where we started, and help them live the life that we've kind of dreamed for them as well. And again, I found these 3 questions. I think they're powerful questions that you have to consider, but what they're going to do as you consider them, it's going to help you maximize the generational wealth that you can leave. So let's start with question number 1, which is, how much is enough for us? And I've actually found that there's actually 3 ways to kind of frame this question in your mind. Because at its base level, how much is enough for us to live? How much is enough for us to get by? How much is enough for us to make sure that everything that is out there that could kind of surprise us or whatever is taken care of? And there's this level of peace that comes when you live at, hey, I know that I've got my basics taken care of. I know that I have enough to live. And when you're not in that position, you're really not in a position to think about generational wealth, because you're thinking about survival, right? And then level 2 of how much is enough for us is, how much is enough for us to save? What are the things that are coming up down the road in the future that we see that we need to be saving for? And so that's getting out of a scarcity place and moving into abundance of, okay, so now we've got some abundance. How much do we need to be saving on a regular basis? Could be, we know we're going to buy some cars in 4 or 5 years. Could be some expenses we know that we're going to pay for. We'll remodel the house. One that a lot of people think about is even retirement or income supplementation, things like that comes down the road that maybe allow you to slow down and do things different as you age. You're thinking about how much is enough. But for a lot of people who are building wealth, and for those who are truly thinking generational wealth, there comes a point where this question shifts. Scarcity is kind of living. We're moving a little bit into abundance on saving, but now you're actually in true abundance, which is, we've got a business, it's functioning, I'm bringing in the income that I want, I'm able to build, I'm thinking towards this future, I'm thinking towards this generational wealth. And so it's how much is enough for us to dream. And there's 2 pieces that come into this. One is, we want the freedom to dream, right? This isn't about handcuffing you to a point of, oh my goodness, you can't have any fun, you can't do anything. But the other thing that you need to think about is there does come a point where, when is enough, right? Is it 4 vacation homes is enough? And one of the biggest problems I find that we have when thinking generational wealth is we don't set a finish line. We don't go to a point of saying, you know what, at this point, I have enough. And if you can't answer that question, 2 things that I know. 1, if you can't figure out where your finish line is, you're not going to build generational wealth, because you're going to end up spending it all. You're going to spend it all on living, saving, and dreaming, and you're not going to be thinking about what you're doing to build the generational wealth. The other thing is, you're going to get distracted in the abundance. I've worked with people and families of abundance for over 20 years now, and my overall experience is more stuff, more problems. Right? So it's always like, oh, it'd be great to have another house. It'd be great to have another car. At some point, we really have to take a look and say, okay, how much is truly enough to dream and do the things that we want without adding the extra headaches? Because when we can answer this question in complete peace, and we can answer this question incomplete clarity, it actually takes us to question number 2 from a standpoint of building generational wealth. And question number 2 is this: how much is enough for our heirs? Wow, have you really ever stopped to think about that? Because there's 2 questions that come into this, right? What is the impact? Especially if you're living in this blessing space and you're like, yeah, I really want to make a huge impact on my heirs. I really want to give them as much as I can. Well, you've got to make sure they're prepared. I've talked about that in other videos. You want to watch those other videos of making sure that your heirs are prepared and that you're asking the right maturity questions. Because depending on the amount of blessing that you're planning to leave, will it be a blessing or will it actually end up being a burden? Are they prepared for it and it's something that's a tool that they can use, or does it become something that becomes a stumbling block for them because it's a resource that's unlimited to a point that allows them to pull in more destruction or more bad things into their life, these unintended consequences that you never had? So you have to think about, what's the maturity of each one of my kids? If I leave them this amount of money, what's that going to look like? If I leave this amount, how's it going to impact them? Second question is, when should we begin? And I'm a big fan of beginning as much as you can to build generational wealth during lifetime, because I truly believe the generational wealth is as much relationship as it is financial. Actually, I believe that it's more relationship than it is financial. And if you wait until you pass away to leave anything, you're not going to be able to build any relationship into it. You're not going to be able to build any wisdom into it. And so when we think about how much is enough for our heirs, what is the impact and when should we begin? But I'm going to tell you what I don't think the answer is, especially for families who are experiencing massive abundance. I don't think it's everything. I don't think we leave everything to our kids, because at some point they need to be building their own things. They need to be doing their own things. Now, you may have a different opinion on this, but these 2 questions on what is the impact and when should we begin, I don't want to create an opportunity that limits my kids' ability to grow or my grandkids because I give them too much. I love the way that Warren Buffett has said this, and Warren Buffett really captures the idea of what I'm trying to say here. He says, I want to give my children enough that they feel that they can do anything, but not so much that they might choose to do nothing. And there is a fine line in there. But let's say for a moment, we've got really, really clear on how much is enough for us, right? We're dreaming, but we're also setting a finish line. And we've looked at it and we've said, how much is enough for our heirs? And we know what the impact is going to be. And we've got a strategic plan of when to begin. There actually is a third question that's going to allow you to maximize this. Who gets what's left over? Well, what do you mean, Eric? What, is there anything left over? Yeah, well, we have built an abundance. There is a point that we set a finish line and say, here's how much is enough for us. There's a point we say, you know what, this is enough for our heirs. And now we have something left over because we're asking strategic and good questions about this generational wealth. And what I would tell you is most families have never asked this question, and they don't give more because no one has ever told them they can. But I want to shift this perspective for you, because these 3 questions actually create something that is even greater that most families don't recognize. When you've asked the question, how much is enough for us? And you've asked the question, how much is enough for our heirs? And you're looking at what gets left over, is this puts families in a position of actually thinking out, what would it look like as the family to create a venture together? And what is this? Well, it's multi-generational engagement through either generosity or impact. What if the family was coming together for a very specific cause? I'll give you an example. In my family, one of our deepest concerns is poverty, especially poverty in the US, a poverty mindset that we've seen happening. And our family specifically gives 2 projects and 2 areas. And my kids are excited about it. My wife are excited about it. Our whole family comes together around this. What could your family, what could you and your kids and your grandkids come together because you asked the questions, how much is enough for us? How much is enough for our heirs? And who gets what's left over? In our life, we've asked that question. My wife and I have thought about our finish line. We've thought about what we're going to do for our kids, when we're going to do it. And it puts us in the position to be able to ask this question. It does not have to be nonprofit related. What if your kids have a business idea and you want to be in venture with them, but the business could then make an impact on the people it employs, on the products it brings or services that it brings to the market? I told you a moment ago that I really believe that passing relationship is more important than passing wealth, because it's where you get the opportunity to pass wisdom. And it's only by asking these 3 questions that you begin to be able to step into this venture space. Because what I found is, for people who don't ask these questions, they actually get stuck. They get stuck because they're not clear on how much is enough for us. And they, well, we're not going to think about doing anything to the kids until after we're dead. And so they never even get to the place because they haven't asked the first 2 questions. I don't know how much is enough for me. So they just keep spending and accumulating for the sake of spending and accumulating, not blessing their kids and pouring wisdom strategically into them. Maybe accidentally, but I'm talking about strategic and intentional investment into your kids for the impact, and then looking at who gets what's left over. This is a life that is rich. When I talk about generational wealth and I talk about this idea, really what's sitting inside of that is not just generational wealth, but it's kingdom impact and generational prosperity. And prosperity is about thriving relationally, thriving financially, thriving spiritually, thriving physically, right? It's a complete embodiment of thriving, and that is true generational wealth. So the next time that you think about building generational wealth, stop and ask yourself these 3 questions. Every person that I've found that has taken the time to do this actually ended up accomplishing more than they ever imagined. And isn't that what we want? We want to impact more through our generational wealth. God bless you. Have a great day.